So it took me 7 years after I graduated high school to come to college, and part of that reason, or part of the reason behind that, was that I thought that college was going to be a lot like high school, and I was going to go to a bunch of classes and sit down and have my teacher tell me things, and I was supposed to write these things down and memorize them and take tests, and that really held me back. I thought, why do I want to go through that to get a good paying job? Let me just find a job that satisfies my needs, and I'll be there. But when I did make my way back to high school, or to college, when I did make my way to college, I I got there still with that expectation and that fear, and I saw college as a chore, something that I was going to have to do if I wanted to progress in life. So I enrolled and I started going. A couple of my classes, math, you're kind of going to have a very traditional style of teaching in that classroom. You're getting the information and you have to kind of figure out how to work it and then apply it to tests and homework and such. But in a culture and psychology class that I took, the instructor asked me to do things I didn't think I was going to do in any class. Part of that was, present on a culture that I was interested in 2 minutes and in any way that I chose, and that became a little bit more scary, or a lot more scary, than just coming to college and sitting and taking notes. I know that doesn't make sense, but I was like, wait, I came expecting to be told how to learn and what to learn, but then this one class just turned that view upside down and said, you tell me what you want to learn about, and you show it to me in a way that's most effective for you.
Being in a Club C class was really outside the box and a new experience, and it made you really think about your work and have to learn differently how to learn. And I thought it was really cool.
Like you kind of have to like unlearn what you already know. I thought it was really cool. One thing that really impacted me when I started doing it is how in my psychology class we were talking about Bloom's taxonomy and how creating is greater than just remembering stuff. And I didn't understand what it meant. And as we kept going with the class, I was just like, oh my god, this is true. And it was a student based, so it was student centered, but it also had somewhat teacher centered learning, which made it really helpful because I have the ability to create my own way of learning and teaching others, and later on I don't even have to be in the classroom to teach what I've learned, and the teacher centered part helped me like stay on track. And so yeah, it was a huge shift for me too.
I think that it's easy for me because I enjoy interpreting assignments, and I get very stressed out when somebody lays out every single rule step by step and says, this is exactly what you need to do and you need to do it just this way. And I feel like sometimes there's always interpretation. And so I usually in other classes would be concerned about like, oh, am I interpreting the question right? Or am I doing this the way that they want me to do it? And sometimes really clear instructions can end up being the opposite. And so when you open it up as big as you have in our class, it's made it where my interpretation every time has just been creative and it's worked. I just came from my other class that I won't name, which is very much you memorize things, you put it on a note card, you memorize it, you put it down word for word when you take the test. So it's like exact opposite. And I find myself doing well there because I'm good at regurgitating information. I'm good at memorizing usually because I do a lot to make sure that I understand. But I see a lot of people struggling in that kind of class environment because they're not doing the work to understand the concepts. And so if they don't understand it, then they can't memorize it and they can't repeat it back on a test. And so I can see people that want to do that and are only good at the regurgitation part, or only good at the I'm going to memorize it and that's all I need to do. I don't ever need to, if you've grown accustomed to that, never having to actually understand it, then I can see our class structure being really hard because you've never had to understand anything. You've only had to regurgitate. if you're good at regurgitation. I can see if you really like just the regurgitation, and if you're really good at just doing exactly, understanding what your teacher wants, but that's really relying on a teacher to be able to communicate what they need. And sometimes that's not always the case too. Sometimes it's really hard for a teacher to ask exactly what they want without doing the work for the students, and then they get frustrated because then they're doing all the work. Like, why am I doing everybody's work? Well, because you're not letting anybody do their own work. So.
But I think in that process you can easily find a student's passion. But to get them involved in things outside of that classroom, with a focus on the things that they're learning within that classroom. And what I mean by that is, for an example would be, I took Psychology 101. There were things that I learned in the course, just like every other student in that room. But I was giving assignments, I was able to do honors projects that were related to the content I was learning. I was able to do the things I was doing through the clubs, as the Aware Club president, working with humans on that campus, and I was able to apply these lenses that I learned in that class, for example. And that can't happen, number one, without the help of the professors. That can't happen without the help of the person teaching you. I believe that wholeheartedly. But then now there's a value to it. There's a value to what I'm receiving. There's a value, I think, even for the professor psychologically of what they're giving. And you're able to see what students are doing, and it's measurable. Then it becomes measurable how much they're learning. I don't believe grades are measurable, because I think it's measurable individually, and individually I know what I did to earn those grades. But to measure the fact that you have groups get up and teach segments of your class, or to measure that you supported this person in working through a club to do a project based on content from your course. I think that these are all things that define transformational learning for a student. And then you have a situation where you have somebody that came to school as a student and leave as a scholar. I think there's definitely a difference.